Good morning, distinguished Academy of Biotechnology scholars, our distinguished Academy of Biotechnology teachers, McKinley Tech administration, and our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Kimberly Watson. Our commitment to student achievement is intentional, strategic, and unwavering. In order to prepare our biotechnology scholars to become formidable contributors to our world, it is imperative that we connect with our support systems in academia, industry, and our community. Our guest speaker exemplifies this exact expectation. As a native Washingtonian, Dr. Watson attended Archbishop Carroll Catholic High School. She attended Howard University School of Pharmacy, where she would co-found one of the largest organizations created with the mission to address an unmet need of pharmacy students seeking employment in the pharmaceutical industry. I had the pleasure of crossing paths with Dr. Watson because of our similar career interests in STEM and our desire to motivate scholars just like you to achieve the unthinkable. It is my pleasure to introduce Pfizer's Senior Manager of Dermatology, Dr. Kimberly Watson.
Hi, thank you, Director Richardson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, is my camera working? Okay, just making sure. Thank you so much for your kind words and the warm welcome. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's Academy of Biotechnology discussion. So once again, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming today. My name is Dr. Kimberly Watson, and today I'm looking forward to talking with everyone at the Academy of Biotechnology about the topic Pharmacy Meets Biotechnology. During today's discussion, I'll be sharing a little bit about my background as well as my current role and responsibilities as a pharmacist at Pfizer. My goal today is to help you understand a little bit more about my experiences, my education, how my experiences shaped the things that led to my professional development and my career. And then finally, I'll share some advice and tips on post-secondary education, as well as matching your skill sets to job areas. And before we get started, I actually want to share one of my favorite quotes from the late Maya Angelou, who was a social activist, a leader within the civil rights movement. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So a little bit about my background. Once again, my position is Senior Manager Dermatology at Pfizer. And Pfizer is a global biopharmaceutical organization with multiple areas and functional groups. I specifically work in dermatology for North America. I attended the University of New Orleans in Louisiana, where I also played volleyball. I double majored in business and chemistry. And also, fun fact about me, I actually coached at McKinley Tech. Do we have McKinley Tech on this call, Sherry? Director Richardson.
Yeah, so McKinley is on this. Everyone here is McKinley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to give out my age, but it was a few years ago, but I used to coach at McKinley. And going out of DC and going to play volleyball in Louisiana, it was actually one of my biggest experiences because when I went to school there, I learned how to be a team player. And really, I learned how to focus on what it means to become a winner and also evaluate yourself after losses too, because no one hates to lose, but sometimes inward perspectives have to start first before you can start contributing externally. During my senior year, I kind of pivoted and switched with my career interest. My senior year, I decided to major in chemistry because I realized that an impactful career for me was within pharmacy. So I took an extra year in undergrad to meet the necessary prerequisites and requirements for application into pharmacy school. So in addition to playing volleyball in undergraduate school, I made sure that when I started pharmacy school, I participated in various organizations. And some to note here include the Industry Pharmacists Organization, the American Pharmacists Organization, and the Student National Pharmaceutical Association. And the last one listed here is actually a student-based national association where students get together to support disparities and bridging the gap between minorities in healthcare. And also on the left-hand side is my contact information. You can reach out today if you have any questions, or if I didn't get to something today, my email address, as well as my LinkedIn and Instagram is provided. So now I want to talk about my position as well as a high-level overview of my role and responsibilities. My position is Senior Manager, Dermatology I&I at Pfizer. An overarching summary of my responsibilities is the mainstay of my work is supporting medical affairs activities for our pipeline assets, meaning these are drugs that have not been approved yet, but we are supporting the safe and appropriate use of those medications by communicating our activities with patients, healthcare providers, just the community. The education required for this position is a doctorate degree, such as a Pharm D, MD, PhD, or DO. The salary range for this position is anywhere between $150,000 to up to $200,000 a year. The preferred skill sets to actually excel within this area is the ability to communicate, and this could be peer-to-peer interactions or communicating to external stakeholders, so providers, nurses, pharmacists, as well as patients. Also, having self-awareness is very important. Self-awareness meaning, are you able to go into a room, listen to an entire discussion, and then understand exactly what is necessary or the steps needed to take to overcome or address a situation. And also, you have to be willing to lead change. A large bucket of my work involves me just stepping up and addressing needs that we never thought about addressing. And it's important to hold yourself accountable, and also no one's going to tell you to do it. So you have to want to seize accountability within this workspace. The impact on society, my role impacts patients globally. So millions of patients are affected by a lot of the work that we do. One of the highlights and areas of growth, I would say, is that there's no limit to how much you can grow here. And I think that that's one thing that I wanted with my career field. And that's just one area of growth that's just unlimited. So what attracted me to the career of pharmacy? First of all, I had no idea that I was going to go into pharmacy. Absolutely none. It wasn't until my senior year in college where I realized that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, or where I wanted to go. So I started to do some research independently. And I realized that although I wanted to be involved in healthcare, pharmacy was the right fit for me. And then once I got into pharmacy school, I was able to participate in organizations, get involved. And that's why I realized that I wanted to work within the pharmaceutical industry, because the opportunities here allow you the ability to connect, to catalyze, and even communicate innovations through medicinal practice on a global level. So you have the opportunity to impact patients that were unimaginable before. So for me, I was able to define a meaningful career. So my meaningful career is one that involves constant engagement. And then this engagement is really involving scientific insights for a variety of audiences. Like I said earlier, it could be patients, healthcare providers, academic institutions, healthcare systems. With all that being said, I don't take my degree for granted. I consider my degree, the things that I achieved, a privilege. And since I consider a privilege, it's something that I'll never take for granted because it's a right. It's a privilege, not a right. Another thing that I think was really important in shaping my growth and just ability to transition into the pharmaceutical industry was my participation within professional organizations. During pharmacy school, I met with one of my faculty advisors, and I was telling her some of the things that I was doing, and she basically yelled at me, and she was just telling me that my behavior was indicative of someone who is not a pharmacist. And in my mind, I was thinking, well, I'm not, I'm a student. And she told me, well, if you stay ready, you'll never have to get ready. And it didn't really register with me, like, what does that really mean? But what I wound up figuring out was if you constantly do the things that you want to do later, even though it's not really that defined, once you transition into the space you want to be, it's really easy. So when I participated in professional organizations, I was able to help strengthen my leadership skills because when you're working on group projects, there's always one person that doesn't pull their weight. There might be one person that always wants to take the lead and charge. And this gives you a chance to really learn how to work with people who you may not like, who may have different values than you, but at the end of the day, working through those conflicts will allow you to step up into positions you never imagined. Also, learning how to communicate with individuals that you're working with was something that I gained. Having the ability to communicate something that was good, that was bad, or even in the middle. And then because of the professional nature of pharmacy school organizations, you get to meet pharmacists in certain areas. So what I started to do was create a list of the things I wanted and I didn't want. So when I was having discussions with pharmacists, I was able to paint a picture for myself and create my own knowledge around where I wanted to be. And then finally, I actually built a lot of solid friends after pharmacy school, and they'll probably be lifelong friends. They definitely will. I've definitely leaned on them for things that were not school oriented, but because of the nature of how hard we had to work together, they've definitely been an integral part of my career to this day. So, this is the top right is my McKinley Tech photo. I had to crop my face out because I think I was raising my voice here, but I wanted to talk more about sports and being involved in team-based activities because I truly believe that working on teams and working with others and collaborating is something that it's a skill that you can't teach. You cannot really teach this skill. But while you're in high school, while you're in college, you can actually work on it. And this could be something that will allow you to really walk in first day on the job and start securing small wins. I remember when I first went to college and my coach used to have me and the entire team compete every day during season, the day before a game, in one-on-ones for starting time the next day. So whoever won would start. And as you could imagine, it kind of got intense on some days, very intense. But at the end of the day, we all lived in the same dorms and we had to spend a lot of time together. So understanding how to constantly compete with someone and be their friend was something that I had to overcome early. And after I talked to my coach about it, he explained to me, if you push this person who you're also competing with, don't you also get better? And I thought about it, and technically, yes, because if we're competing every day and I'm pushing you because I would like to win and you are too, we're going to get better in parallel. And once I took a step back and realized that no matter what, all I can do is focus on myself and worry about me, I realized that competition is not that bad. And then this is a quote that he shared with me, and I'm going to share it with you all today. So he told me that alone we can do so little, but together we can do much more. So I say that to say that for all of the activities that you're going to engage in really for the rest of your life, there's strength in numbers, and assuming that you can do something alone is a bad idea, because at the end of the day, getting feedback, working with other people can only benefit you if you focus on the things that you can control. Another thing that helped shape my professional development in school, I said I was involved in professional organizations and things like that. But during your 4th year of pharmacy school, because pharmacy school is a 4-year doctorate program, I had an opportunity to do elective rotations. So your 4th year in pharmacy school, you have to obtain 1,500 hours of rotational experience to sit for your boards. And you get this through 8 5-week rotations. So for my elective blocks, I chose to reach out to a few pharmacists that I met through professional organizations and ask them to sign up to become a preceptor, because my school did not offer at the time industry rotations. So through those interactions, I was able to work at GlaxoSmithKline and global regulatory affairs, as well as commercial development. I also worked at Baxter Healthcare within health policy and reimbursement, and their office is actually on Connecticut Avenue. And half of my time was spent at the White House, influencing and talking to politicians about healthcare and policies and helping them understand patients who need access to certain medications. So that was really eye-opening. So I'd like to take a step back and talk about how I started to prepare for employment. So I felt like I prepared for employment twice, because in undergraduate school, I thought that I was just going to graduate with my bachelor's and just live this fabulous life. But I had to take a step back and realize I needed more experience and education to support my career plans. So the second time I prepared for employment was in pharmacy school, and I started about a year before graduation. So a year before graduation, I decided to pick where I wanted to be, what area, what group, and where I was willing to move and live for work. So from there, I started to make a list of the companies that I would like to work at, the areas that I would like to work within, which led me to focus on medical affairs only. By the time I graduated school that following year, I had applied to over 100 jobs, and then I had interviewed with over 15 pharmaceutical companies. And then the interview process is actually really long. You go through multiple rounds of interviews. And I'll give you an example. I had an interview for a company in Connecticut, and I had one phone screening. After the phone screening, I had a second interview with two colleagues. And then I had a third interview, which was actually at the company headquarters, which was a 5-hour long interview where you have a meet and greet, you go to lunch, you meet the entire team. And a lot of times they ask you to do a presentation at the very end, which is what I did. So the interview process is really, really long. The next thing I would like to talk about is something that I started to learn at the very end of pharmacy school, and that's really matching your strategy to a situation. So if you think about a strategy, it's really an overarching plan about how you want to go about doing something. And usually you have to be really honest with yourself and set realistic expectations for how you're going to get this done. And one thing that I actually did in school was I wasn't sure what was a realistic expectation, because sometimes I shoot for the stars and land on the moon. So I made sure that I followed up with my advisors. I gave them my plan and I asked them, does this sound legit? Is this okay? And then from there, I was able to understand a little bit more with the history around certain situations, because if you think about it, if you talk to an advisor, obviously they're probably a pharmacist as well. They had their own career, and they might be able to point me in the right direction to someone who could also help me. And also talking to students who graduated the year before, that helped me a lot because they already did what I'm doing. So at the end of the day, I think that someone who has the time or bandwidth will probably help me, or at least cut the learning curve that I would have with applying for jobs. Also, I ask for feedback. This part can be tricky because sometimes people who may not support the things that you really want to do may not give you the best feedback. And I'll give you an example. I know that when I want the truth, I will call my sister, because my sister will tell me hands down everything that is wrong with me, my outfit, how I'm talking, everything. But if I want to get someone to be positive or give me good advice, I'll call my mom, because she's just very sweet and flowers and roses. So understanding who you need to talk to for certain situations is very important. And then also finally, leading with the right skills in a certain situation, because you can't approach every situation the same way. And there may be instances where you can, but the best way to think about it is if you have a certain goal or result that you'd like, and then you're not getting that result, you're probably leading with the wrong skills. And that's where you go back to the very beginning and you have to reset expectations. Always pursue multiple career paths. This is actually something that I never thought about in high school and in undergrad, really. In undergraduate school, I only wanted to do healthcare administration. I didn't have a plan B, I didn't have a plan C, and I didn't really work outside of areas of interest that were not a priority to me. And once I started pharmacy school, I had someone tell me that everything is important. And so I'm thinking, well, what everything? Is there one class that's just not that important? Or is there, one class that maybe I don't have to work really hard in, but you have to put in effort consistently with everything that you're given an opportunity to learn. And I did that in pharmacy school, and that allowed me a lot of different advantages. The first one was I was able to confidently speak to why I wanted to do one thing versus the other, because I made sure I put in the same effort in areas that I hated and areas that I liked a lot. And being able to have that conversation with someone who's never met me before gives them the confidence to hire me, because they know that I understand why I want to be there. So, like I said earlier, I applied to a lot of jobs, over 100 jobs. I graduated school in May, and I was actually studying for my boards, and I was working at a pharmacy on Benning Road in Southeast, and I actually had to leave town for an interview. So when I left my interview, I was in the car on my way to the airport, and I got a phone call from a number that I didn't recognize. So I answered the phone. The woman introduced herself and said that there was a job opening at a company, and she couldn't tell me where, but if I sent her my CV and if I'm a qualified applicant, I will be considered for this position. So that's strange, but something told me to just go ahead and send her my resume, which I did. And she called me back the same day and let me know that this position was at Pfizer. So once you told me it was at Pfizer, I saw that the position was in dermatology. So that prompted me to go to the company website. And I looked at Pfizer's website because I wanted to make sure that the company or organization was aligned to my personal goals, my mission, and the things that I value most within my work. And once I looked at the assets that they had within dermatology, the disease states that they were working on, the diverse portfolio that they had that seek to cure diseases that affect African Americans and all races. I really got excited for this position. I was thinking, oh my gosh, I hope they give it to me. I'm going to be really upset. And when I got my interview, my first interview, I looked on the calendar invitation and I kept looking at the name on the calendar and I kept thinking to myself, I've met this person before. And then finally, I was able to remember that the same person who was interviewing me came to my school 2.5 years ago and spoke at an event. And this event was in the middle of the day between classes where I wanted to sleep, I wanted to get some food. I was just tired. And I remember forcing myself to actually put on business casual clothes instead of like, I don't know, a Heaven Hansley jumpsuit. And he was there that day speaking to my class. And when we talked during my interview, he actually remembered me. And after that interview, I just thought to myself, wow, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't show up to school that day, or I decided to not be the student that I told myself I was going to be. I could have discounted myself an opportunity that you can't really predict things like this. So I say all that to say, it's really hard to understand the things that are really important early in your career. So since you can't understand it, just do everything. Always treat an opportunity like something that can turn into something that you can't even imagine. And after that first interview, of course, I was excited, right? I had two more. I met one of my second team members. I met the third member. And then that next week, I received my offer. Once I received my offer, they asked me to move to Collegeville, Pennsylvania. So Collegeville, if anyone is familiar, it's about 2 hours north of DC. So it's not that far, but at the same time, I did have to move. So that was one decision that I was ready to make because I already mapped out a year prior to where I was willing to move. And this was an area that I was willing to relocate to. So once I got hired, I had an onboarding less than a month later. So an onboarding process is essentially where you, just like the term says, you onboard. So you slowly transition into your role. You have to do a lot of trainings, develop your expertise within your field of interest. And I finished that around September. And that's when I really started doing more work. And then I want to say about 2 months ago, my team opened up another position at senior manager because I didn't put this on the slide. I joined Pfizer last year as a medical scientific associate. So when the senior manager position opened on my team, we also had other applicants apply as well. So you have to compete for this position. So although this was my team, I worked with them for a long time, I did have to step up and make sure that no one else took this position because I felt as though this was something that was a good fit for me. So at the end of the day, I think that if I could pick one thing that shaped, a lot of the things that helped support where I am today. Number one, growing up in DC for sure. But number two is having a certain mindset, because I truly believe that growing up in DC gave me different perspectives on life, and keeping a positive attitude during times that are not the best, dealing with certain things such as violence or, you know, losing friends, things like that. You have to really make sure that you don't focus on things that you can't control. But if you can manage to focus on things that you have no control over, and you pivot and focus on the things that you can change, the things that you can do, DC will help you grow into a person who can really influence and thrive in the corporate workplace. And also just acknowledging that things don't always turn out the way you want them to, and that's okay. And it sounds so cliche, but things are always going to evolve. You always have to be a constant learner and make sure that you stay adaptable and flexible and, you know, recognizing conflict or walking away from conflict. But if you continue to keep pushing, it always works out. It really does. And the last thing that I would like to close in on for today is something that I think is really important. Watch out for people who want to hold you back. And I don't necessarily mean in a literal sense, right? I think that in high school, Director Richardson, I think yesterday we talked about this at Seton when we had a friend who like left Carroll, went to Seton, and they wound up getting expelled from school.
Yes, we talked about that.
So Seton and Carroll, we didn't necessarily have a rivalry, but there were definitely some things that happened between students at opposing schools. And I remember when I think we used to get out earlier than you guys, and I had some friends who wanted to approach a girl about a situation that I had nothing to do with. But I knew that the dean at our school had informed us multiple times if we went on campus another school and there was some type of argument, you will automatically get expelled. And I knew that I think the school in my neighborhood was Teddy Roosevelt, and I didn't want to go there at the time because I had a lot of family that went there, and I just knew that it wasn't going to be the best situation for me. So I didn't have any options. So I can't get expelled. And then, you know, my parents, things like that. So that day I chose I'm not going with you guys. I'm not going. And I can't say that that person was trying to hold me back, but understanding that you need to take a step away from certain situations where you know that something bad might happen, and you never know how that could stratify later in your life. So making decisions to walk away from things that you know are not really supporting your journey and being the best version of yourself, then just don't do it. Because at the end of the day, you have to promote yourself first. And then promoting yourself is really like a journey. Like every day, you have to think about promoting yourself. It's not really a destination. It's not really a place that you'll end up. Because I remember my first day at work, and I met with my boss. I was thinking that he was going to ask me to do a bunch of different tasks, things like that. He asked me to write my goals. And I was thinking, I thought I was just graduating my goals. But he told me that, you know, he wanted me to write my goals down and things that I wanted to do and get involved with outside of just my day-to-day work. And thinking about that type of mindset, it was just weird because I had to transition my mind to think about the fact that for the rest of my life, I'm going to be setting goals and striving to continually improve myself. And then, working constantly to ensure that you're engaging in the real challenges of your new. That just means that when you get up every day, like understand that you need to approach the things that you have as an adversity as just something that you'll be able to use as fuel later. You'll be able to use later, because overcoming a situation will really allow you to just see the world differently. And having a different perspective in a room full of people who see things one way is, like I said earlier, really a game changer. So I'll say it again, I think that growing up in DC was something that was really influential and helped impact my life and the things I can do for others on just a scale that I never really thought was possible. So everyone here on this call today is actually, in my opinion, more involved than I was in high school, because I don't even think that we had biotechnology programs in school, high school. I took one biology course, chemistry, and then I felt like in college I had to literally learn from the very, very beginning. So everyone here today is on the right track to do things that are bigger than what I'm doing right now. So I definitely think that just keeping a good mindset, understanding that everything's important, and just being present, being respectful, and working with people, pushing through working with people who are not your best friend. It's okay, it's fine. But bearing in mind what your ultimate goal is and just pushing past that. So now I'm just going to open up the floor for Q&A. We finished a little bit early, so I can definitely speak more about what I do at Pfizer, some of my day-to-day activities, and
Dr. Watson. Looks like you got kicked out, but you're back. I can see you. Okay. Did you want to talk about your day-to-day, or do you?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely.
Your day-to-day. Okay, and we'll go into questions next. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just pulling this up real quickly. Okay, so the senior manager role in dermatology is a team-based role, and you're an integral member on the medical affairs team. So medical affairs is basically the driver of all activities within drug development, because you need to have your studies and you need to have a robust clinical program to be able to submit and file with the FDA to show that this is a medication that meets the safe and appropriate use for patients who are suffering from a disease. And in dermatology, there are actually over 100 immune-mediated diseases. So immune-mediated means that your body has some type of extrinsic, meaning the weather or allergies or something that affects your skin, or intrinsic, meaning that you have some type of genetics or predisposition to have a disease. For example, alopecia areata is a disease that involves your hair follicles. And people think that alopecia sometimes involves only your scalp or hairline, but there are patients who have no eyelashes. And if you could imagine, walking outside and dust and particles, it really affects your quality of life. So having the opportunity to work in areas that have no medications, no medicines to support people who are suffering from these diseases is something that I learned about once I saw the position, and immediately it resonated with me. It really did. So I say all that to say, depending on the day of the week, I can support a bunch of different things. Some of them include writing medical content, helping the approval process of materials that are used to have discussions with healthcare providers, also patients, as well as having the ability to train and teach commercial colleagues on how to professionally promote this medicine. So do I have time to go further, Director Richardson? I keep wanting to call you by your first name. I should have practiced this.
It's okay. It's okay. So actually, we'll go into questions because we have about 15 minutes left before we wrap up. And scholars have actually been posing some excellent questions in the chat. So we'll get into the Q&A really quickly.
Okay.
Okay, great. So we'll kick it off with Kayla's question. She actually got 4 likes, so it's pretty cool. She wants to know, what's the most challenging obstacle you've had to overcome throughout your career?
I would say, actually, the most challenging obstacle for me was not necessarily like the coursework or getting up and going to school. It's really asking for help. So when I say asking for help, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go to your faculty office hours and ask them to review a lecture, but you have to understand how to approach something the right way every time. And sometimes you may not even know that you're doing something the wrong way. There was one particular instance where I thought I had it in the bag for one of my classes, and I got my test score back, and it was a FF. It was real low. I was doing the math in my car, and I was thinking what grade I need to get to pass, and it was pretty high. So now I'm scared, right? And no one wants to showcase the fact that they're failing, right? But when I drove home that day, I was like, well, if you fail, you're going to have to repeat the school year. I'm not doing that. I've been in school long enough. So the next day when I went to class, I just started talking to some of my classmates. Hey, how did you do on this exam? Okay, well, I failed. And I was wondering, can you help me? And sometimes it's you willing to be vulnerable to allow yourself to overcome something, because I could have said, well, I passed every other class. I've done well in school before. I can do this on my own. But I actually know individuals who were in the same situation but didn't ask for help, and they never graduated. So I think that the most important, the biggest obstacle I had was learning how to ask for help and then making adjustments with that, because you don't always need help for everything, but just understanding what situations are appropriate with communicating with others or even asking for feedback. Because if you think about it, well, for me, I was the first doctor in my family. So no one understands healthcare. Everyone's asking me questions all the time. So going into pharmacy school, I don't have a playbook. I don't really know what's the best way to, apply for jobs and do things like that. So understanding that when you do go to work and you do work with other people, asking for them to support you or asking for them to tell you the honest truth on how you did, and then not getting offended, actually taking the things that they said, not getting upset and just bossing up and then improving on those things. That's probably the hardest thing. It's not really the coursework. It wasn't really showing up to school. It's being that person who's always going to get up and make it happen no matter what.
Awesome. Okay. Next question. Got a lot of likes from Nike. Since 2020 has been an eventful year for everyone, have there been any certain events that impacted your work experience in any way?
Yes. Number one, I'm sitting in my little corner for 1 million hours a day. I mean, that's one thing. If you think about it, everyone has been impacted by this year. And I don't even know where to begin or end with how much of an impact this year has been on my work, and then making me question, why I'm here, and, really having me take a step back and just getting a diary. Just getting a diary and writing down my thoughts and the things that I'm doing every day to just hold it together. But I don't want to get too deep in like how much has changed, because everything has changed, literally everything. I would just say that And we talked about this yesterday, Director Richardson. We
Yes.
sure did. I was talking about how history always repeats itself, but history doesn't repeat itself exactly in the same schematic, but history repeats itself in a sense of when there's an economic downturn or when there's some sort of drastic situation in society. At the end of that economic downturn, there's always some sort of group or organization or movement that happened with people who overcame that later. So understanding history, and then how decisions are made with certain things that are still consistent today will really allow everyone to not focus on the bad.
Right.
And then think about the next few months, what you can do and plan now to really be a leader in the things that people are waiting on. Only because you gave yourself a little history lesson.
Thank you. The next question is sort of, I think you kind of answered it, but it was, it got a lot of likes. How has COVID affected your ability to work in this field?
Yeah, so medical affairs, like I mentioned earlier, is one of the drivers of every activity at Pfizer. And if you think about getting on a bus and you're driving the bus, everyone's getting on the bus, but now your bus is kind of taking a detour. Everything has changed and been affected because the way that people understand the safe and appropriate use of medicine is through communicating information at a meeting, at a conference, at an academic institution, things like that. And participating in clinical trials is something that patients who have no access to medicines were able to get and overcome, a disease that they were suffering with for a long time. So everything is delayed and things like that. But I think that I've just come to a point now where I understand that something has changed, but I've already figured out a plan to work within this space. So for me now, I can't even say that I'm working in COVID. I'm just working. I'm just working.
Yeah. Great. Okay, next question. So to the extent you can legally answer this question, what kinds of dermatological medicine have you helped produce or produced yourself?
So like I said earlier, there is no I in team. So the drug development process is very long. One of the assets that I had the opportunity to help support, the molecule was created in 1993.
Wow.
1993. So when I saw the photo of the team, the R&D team who came up with the molecule, everyone had on like the big Gucci shades and just outfits. And there was only one person in the photo who was still working at Pfizer. That just tells you that it's not a one-man job, and the life cycle of a drug has so many phases that I support only one aspect of it. But the disease areas that we are focused on, it's all on the company website, but few to note is atopic dermatitis. And atopic dermatitis is actually a common and misdiagnosed disease that involves the skin. And I actually had the opportunity to meet a few patients who are actually suffering a lot from the disease. And there are some parents who actually had to stop working because their children have to be wrapped in bandages every day just to walk, live, and just carry out activities. So having experiences to meet patients who really can benefit from the things that we're producing is what keeps me going right now. But in addition to atopic dermatitis, some more common diseases in dermatology include alopecia areata, as well as vitiligo, psoriasis, things like that.
Okay. Next question, and in the interest of time, I'm going to go with the questions that have a lot of likes. So what would you tell a person questioning whether they want to be in the medical field or not?
Shadow somebody. That's what I did, because like I said, I had no idea I wanted to do pharmacy until my senior year. And the way I found out that I wanted to be a pharmacist was I was on Wikipedia at first because I didn't know where to search. I didn't know anyone, but I saw that in order to, work as a hospital administrator, you need to have a master's. And then that's 2 years. And then I saw that you needed to have 3 to 5 years of business experience. And then in my mind, I kept thinking that's the same amount of time it would take to be a doctor. And then I was like, oh wait, you might be onto something. And then I looked up, what it means to be a doctor. And I was like, well, that makes sense now, because why would I want to go into healthcare administration supporting healthcare and I don't really understand it because I have a business degree. So that really fueled me to even become a doctor. And once I did that, I just started I went to the chemistry building and I was like, hello, and hi, this is, introduce myself. This is what I'm trying to do. And I was able to shout out some pharmacists. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I can do this. I want to be here. And that's really what I continue to do in pharmacy school. I joined a lot of organizations and I would just talk to the pharmacists. I would ask them questions. I would talk about my feelings. I would definitely close the door and say, I'm not having a good day and I'm having an issue with A, B, and C. And could you please walk me through what you would do? Like, what would you do? And having those real conversations with people who are supposed to guide you, even though they didn't ask you that, but you promoted yourself in that situation. So I think that that's really what you have to do if you want to be a doctor or if you want to do anything, honestly. Promote yourself, find out who's doing what you want to do, and then just work backwards.
Great. Okay, let me see. I think we have time for 2 more. So we're going to do, what's your favorite and most challenging part about working at Pfizer? So favorite, most challenging.
Fair and challenging?
Favorite and then most challenging.
My favorite part about working at Pfizer is just the science, the science, because having the opportunity to change the quality of life in someone through an innovation, and then actually going into a clinic and talking to someone who was suffering before and now is not, is something that, I love my job, right? I'm happy here. But something that I find the most challenging is probably staying in a mindset where you want to be innovative, but you also want to make sure you're addressing the now. You want to be focused on the things in the future, but you also want to be focused on the present. So one thing that I do with my boss is I set goals twice a year, and then we'll do check-ins and we'll assess where I am with those goals, because I can think about my innovations, but if I come up with an idea that's beyond what's in my goals, I will try my best to push it to the side, because it's a challenge to be in an environment where you have an open forum to create things, but then you still have other things that you agreed to do. That's probably the hardest part about my job, but.
Okay, cool. And I guess last but not least, we might have time for one more after this, but
I'll try to make my answer shorter.
Sure, that's okay. Someone wants to know, what's your skincare routine?
Oh.
Got a lot of likes for this one.
Water, H2O. Honestly, I struggled with my skin in high school and college, but I found a dermatologist in Washington, D.C., and the insurance that I had was not the best. And I had to go through a lot of steps to call to get into the specialist office. When I went into the specialist office, I promoted myself and I made sure that me and the dermatologist had a conversation about my skin, my regimen, and what I could do to improve like the way I wanted to like look. Not, I don't want to say look to be overarching, but just make my skin clear. So that's really how I got my skincare regimen, but I really don't do anything to my skin anymore.
Magic. It's magic. Okay. Okay, and last but not least, we have 2 minutes. If you could do it all over again, what would you do differently?
I knew somebody was going to ask that today. That's why I have my answer ready. If I could go back over and do it all over again, I wouldn't take one situation for granted, okay? So in high school, if I had some friends who were seniors or upperclassmen in college, I would let the things that they were doing or let people influence the things that I would deem as important, right? So in school, you may be in classes, you may have professors who are not what you like. You may work with people who are not the best, but if I could go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't take one thing for granted versus the other, because that discounted me later because I had to work harder to catch up. Because when I decided to go to pharmacy school, I didn't remember anything from biology. Nothing. And I was mad at myself because if I just would have paid a little bit more attention, my life would be easier right now. And it wasn't. And then a second thing that I would say that I wish I could have done was understanding that you still need to enjoy being where you are. So in high school, it's like, I'm ready to graduate. We're senior year. I almost said what year we graduated high school, class of blah, blah, blah. But understanding that you need to learn how to enjoy being where you are. Find a way to enjoy being in quarantine, being in this virtual setting, and then think about how you can overcome it by doing something that you wouldn't do if we weren't in this virtual world. So I think that if I could go back, I would probably try to celebrate being where I am despite wanting to like, maybe get out of Southeast or leave DC, things like that. Sorry. Okay, can we do one more? That was a long answer.
So it is 10:45. Let me see. I can go back up and we'll turn all the students loose. Let me see. I think one of the questions was, how do you manage like your work life and your social life?
So my work life and social life, I make sure that during the week, I will prioritize all my tasks that I want to do during the week. And if I have to work extra hours during the week to have my weekend freed, I will. Or what I used to do in high school was, I would wake up early on Saturdays and I would do work in the morning from like 7 to maybe 11 o'clock. But just having those 3 extra hours and getting up early allowed me, my conscience was free. We go to Union Station, whatever. And I would just say managing your time. So picking things that you know you can do during this time block, whatever time block, and just sticking to it. So writing down things you want to do for the day, week, and month is really how you can manage your time and work and play too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Watson, for answering everyone's questions. And I actually like to let the Academy know that today is Dr. Watson's birthday. So she decided to join us on her birthday. So feel free to drop a happy birthday in the chat to celebrate, her being with us today. So, and thank you for setting aside this time and, dedicating a moment to our scholars. Before we wrap it up, Dr. Schuster or Ms. Barker, would you guys like to say anything? The chat is blowing up. So happy birthday, Ms. Dr. Watson.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your life experience and being willing to share it with our scholars. My 3rd and 4th period students, you're going to check in with me very briefly to get the survey about this, and then I will turn you loose for a study hall to make up class that you missed this morning.
Study hall.
Yeah, just reiterating everything Ms. Barker said. Thank you so much for coming to speak to our scholars today, and happy birthday. And my students, yeah, definitely come to second and third period, and we'll talk about what we're doing in class today.
All right. So thank you, scholars. Thank you, Dr. Schuster and Ms. Barker. And thank you, Dr. Watson, for being with us today and giving us your time. So as of right now, we're going to wrap it all up and send everyone on their way.
All right. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a good day. Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.